Welcome everyone to another weekly edition of the Argentina Brief, this time for the week of Monday, June 2nd. First, a quick reminder that you can now watch episode 3 of the Argentina Brief podcast. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple, so be sure to check it out to get the gist of everything that happened in May. Okay, so plenty of action this week. Let's get straight into it. One of the big headlines from Bloomberg News this week was that Stan Druckenmiller has bought back into Argentina stocks. SEC filings showed that his Duquesne family office picked up $128 million in YPF stock alone, now trading at 20-year highs, and added to positions in Vista Energy and the MSCI Argentina ETF. And Druckenmiller wasn't alone. Morgan Stanley, UBS, Goldman Sachs, JPMorgan, and Citi all bought Argentine equities in Q1. Part of that buying appetite was down to speculation that MSCI could reclassify Argentina up from its standalone status this month. Morgan Stanley's Nikolai Lipman estimates that if Argentina gets bumped to emerging market status, equities could see up to $5 billion in passive inflows. On the fixed income side, Argentina's capital markets just posted their best start to a year since 2015. Companies raised $6.2 billion through issuances in the first 4 months of the year, the highest nominal amount in a decade. Dollar-denominated corporate bonds drove nearly 90% of the total. We also had some major energy news this week. Swiss commodity trader Mercuria closed its acquisition of Shell's downstream assets in Argentina for $1.42 billion. That's the Dock Sud refinery, 894 gas stations, and several other facilities. And second, Chevron filed an RIGI application for El Trapial, a $13.8 billion upstream development in Vaca Muerta, the first project filed exclusively by a U.S. company under this incentive scheme. The RIGI scheme, which involves tax, customs, and FX benefits for a period of 30 years, now has 38 projects totaling over $107 billion in committed investments. The central bank crossed a major milestone this week, $10 billion purchased in reserves since January 5th, surpassing its full-year IMF target 7 months early on the 100th consecutive buying session. BCRA Vice President Vladimir Verning said that the central bank has restored its capacity to handle FX stress ahead of the 2027 presidential elections, not just through reserves, however, but through a credible futures book, the full availability of inherited swaps by mid-year, and a structural shift in the current account driven by energy exports. And in trade news, Foreign Minister Pablo Quirno announced Argentina formally applied to join the Trans-Pacific Trade Bloc, 12 countries representing 13% of global GDP. When Milei took office, Argentina had trade agreements covering about 10% of GDP, but that jumped up to 30% after the Mercosur-EU deal took effect. And finally, the latest monthly survey from the central bank. Analysts expect May inflation at 2.3%, with monthly readings breaking below 2% by August. Annual inflation is projected at 30.5% for 2026, falling to 19.9% in 2027. And GDP growth has been forecast at 2.9% this year and 3.1% both in 2027 and 2028. And on the FX, the median estimate sees the peso at 1,658 per dollar by December. That's the week. Don't forget to follow the Argentina Brief on X for the full thread with all the details, and also be sure to follow the YouTube channel and Spotify accounts for the monthly hour-long podcast.